just like to welcome you all to the 4th Multilingual Information Stakeholders Forum. And my name is Nidia Raya Martinez, and you RSVP to me. And I was so pleased as the numbers were building, and especially from some of our partners that haven't attended our previous forums, such as many interpreters and translators. So you'll be seeing all your old friends here, a time to catch up. Before proceeding, I would like to acknowledge that today we are here on the land of the Darung people, and the Darung people are the traditional owners of the land. We would also like to acknowledge the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live in this area. There's a few familiar faces here, some frequent flyers of our 4 forums. So for those who have attended all 4 of our forums this year, you've now come up to gold frequent flyer status. I don't know if it's a bit of extra buffet at lunchtime or maybe a certificate of acknowledgement. But we're also pleased to acknowledge the new faces that we see here, and we're so glad that you've come on board for this discussion that we're going to have today, which I hope will be a milestone discussion as to where health translations will be moving in the future. So recently I was at a multicultural interagency at Fairfield, and during the break somebody was saying to me, or talking to me about the changes in their organisation, that there was going to be a restructure in their organisation. And he said to me, business as usual now means no business at all. And that made me stop and made me think about today's forum. What will health translations and the business of health translations look like in the next 5 to 10 years? Will keeping the existing model mean that there will be no business, or do we need to adapt? And I think back to organisations like Kodak, to our video stores. There is still a video store in my suburb, but they've linked it up to a cafe to make it more social. So with those models, we have to say, what does this mean for the work that we're doing? I also had to start to think, do we really need to wait 5 to 10 years for that change to exist? Or is the future already here? This was actually brought to my attention by one of the stakeholders at the last forum. When he heard that we were doing translations, he said, Nidia, have you seen this app? Which I hadn't. And so I thought I'll share it more broadly. So the king of technological change over the last couple of decades, Steve Jobs, I thought we'd draw on this, especially for this forum, that technology is nothing. What is important is that you have faith in people, that they're basically good and smart, and if you give them the tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. So with that said, this morning we'll be hearing from a range of speakers on the latest research and what's happening in practice in health translations. In the afternoon, we'll be discussing and debating what could or should be happening in New South Wales and in the New South Wales health system. At all times knowing that we're in good hands and wonderful things are possible. So with nothing further to do, I would like to introduce our first speaker today, who is Michael Camit. Michael Camit is our Marketing and Communications Manager at the New South Wales Multicultural Health Communications Service. When I asked for his bio, he asked me to call him one of the dinosaurs of health translations, which I didn't think was particularly flattering, so I'll call him one of the veterans of health translations. And I also want to acknowledge Terry Cheshire, who was involved. I don't think she's here, but I want to acknowledge her work in health translations also. Michael is also currently studying a PhD on how the world of communications is evolving through the use of social media in multicultural communities. I now welcome Michael to the stage.
It's always challenging to be vertically challenged. So, thank you, Nidia. First of all, I'd like to just acknowledge the amount of work that Nidia's done in putting this forum together. Can we just show her appreciation? To come up with the idea of why don't we just hound this Anne, you know, the research papers that I've seen. Because normally you read research papers and these faceless people, you know, you say, oh, you send them an email and you never hear from them. And this is what happened, you know, this is one of the ideas that Nidia had. It says, I'm going to stalk this person until she agrees to speak at this forum. So wonderful job. And Anne, if you're listening, she was following up, not stalking you. Okay, so... good morning, everybody. On behalf of our director, Peter Todaro, I'd like to say welcome. Unfortunately, Peter can't be here this morning. So this section in the next few minutes, the first part is really for the non-frequent flyers that Nidia said. So those who've never been, never heard of our service, this section really is for you. So in the next few minutes, what I'd like to do is trace the journey. And just to put this dinosaur term in context, I was one of the 3 consultants that were that had the job of putting the multicultural health communication service. So I'm not really a translation specialist. So let me just clarify that. Also on the program, you'd see my name in the afternoon. I'm not gonna talk for hours. I'm just facilitating. So let me just clear that first before you go him again. Okay, so our service is a statewide service, and it's funded by the the Ministry of Health, and its vision is to increase access of culturally and linguistically diverse communities to quality health information. We summarize this as better health through better communication. So in 1997, when the dinosaur era started here, the translations unit of then the New South Wales Department of Health was reviewed. And one of the recommendations was to come up with a service that looks at communication at a broader level. When we first started as well, we thought, well, what's the evidence of translated information? A lot of them in 1997, for those of you who were around just before the internet was giving us this amazing impact, there were a lot of publications that were sitting in hospital cupboards. So we did the review and we said, we looked at both the evidence and also the current practice, and we went around the state, the different health services, and said, what do you actually do when you get these publications? And we found that there were inconsistencies in the quality of the translations. So this is not new for you people now, but then we were quite surprised. There were publications that did not identify the language in English. So it's well and good to have a language other than English, but if you don't know what the language is, know the topic, know how recent and accurate the translation is, you will be loath to actually distribute it. And that's what happened. The resources were actually kept in cupboards. So people complained about, oh, another initiative for the ethnics. So we looked at that and we reviewed. So what did we come up with? So throughout periodically, every 2-3 years, we came up with the evidence. And we put this information in the form of guidelines. And the first forum for this year was about that, reviewing the guidelines on the current evidence on the production of multilingual resources for health, for the health system. I also wanted to clarify that in 1997, we thought the most manageable thing that we can do, seeing that we have over 200 languages in Australia, is to work with organizations and individuals working with culturally and linguistically diverse communities. That's a manageable group, rather than say, we're for everybody, you know. The other, so just going back to the guidelines, it's freely available, and also there's back translations and other options for checking, for quality assurance. And I'd like to acknowledge Terry Cheshire for driving a lot of that work. The other thing that we found, I'm not sure if you can see that, is shellfish. So we found that because the mindset of people were about then, and probably still is now, about geographic boundaries. This is my area health service, this is my local health district, and this is my brand, and we funded this. Therefore, we really should benefit from this, not the whole state. And it was mainly because of the whole concept of the internet and the global village wasn't quite there yet. So we also found that branding ownership in the different contexts. A lot of local health districts or area health services then wanted to make it geographically specific. Here's information about, you know, for example, here's information about sexual health. This is the opening hours of our clinic. So since then, we moved quite a long way. We have a website now. So and to us, 1997, it was quite cutting-edge technology, PDF. So you can download it. Wow, and you can photocopy it. So you just save on those cupboard space. So now you can put your quinoa in there. No, I'm kidding. No, you can put a lot of, you know, other. So the storage issue was solved, and also you can count how many times you download things. We also have developed an initiative called the Multicultural Health Communication Awards, which recognizes good practice in the production of multilingual health resources. And I'd like to acknowledge our recently retired Chris Golan from the audience, who sort of helped shape that. So this year, no, sorry, not this year, next year, this is a plug for those of you who are producing multilingual health resources, whether it's machine-based or not. We'll find out, but it's September 2015, so please mark that date in your calendar. So those initiatives try to reduce the duplication, but also say these are the examples of what we think, based on the evidence and the practitioners and the discussions on what constitutes good practice. Another thing that we found was around that particular time was some people or some services looked at the different languages as a challenge, and they thought, if I give CALD communities a pamphlet, that will change their behavior. It used to be a stand-alone strategy, and sometimes it still is. Since then, we've developed a capacity as a service to develop campaigns. A lot of them have been very effective, if I may even say so, and have won awards. And also, we've embraced this concept of two-way communication. Because back then, and sometimes still is in health promotion, a lot of the messages are one way, with very, very little room for feedback or engagement with the communities. So those of you working on the coalface of the communities, you know that. People go, well, this pamphlet is in Mandarin or in Chinese, but the number is an interpreter service. Wouldn't it be better if we have a Mandarin language line, like what we've established with the Quit line? So since then, we've embraced, you know, after a few years of submissions about why we should trust us with Facebook. So we have embraced and social media. As such, we also looked at different ways of engagement now. And I'm very proud, this is one of our ongoing projects, to address the low rates of screening in mammograms in women from Indian and Sri Lankan backgrounds, the Pink Sari Project. So we have never seen volunteering from the community at this level, where the communities are actually ringing us saying, well, we've organized a talk with a local breast screen. So normally it's one way. We say, we would like you to come to a forum, and here's some pamphlets. So we're looking at all of this. Oops. So this forum is about issues, and I'd like to raise two issues up front for the panel speakers to consider, and also for the audience. Last year at the Multicultural Health Week event, the focus was patient safety. we ask, what is the impact, what is the link with language, culture, and patient safety? And one of our speakers, Professor Megan Johnston, who's an expert in patient safety, in her keynote speech, identified one of the many cases. She reviewed the international studies, and this was one that grabbed me. As you can see, $71 million for one word. This case study highlighted what happened when a health worker did not use a professional interpreter and assumed the word intoxicado as drunk, which you'd think in English. The person who was admitted, the patient had brain damage and was awarded $71 million. Now, I'm not saying this might happen, but as a service, as a health service, we have a responsibility or duty of care. So if we look at, if I pose a continuum of what I call coffee table resources, like how healthy is a vegetarian diet? Or how much water do I drink today? I mean, as opposed to this procedure explains what's going to happen, and you need to make a decision. You need to make an informed choice that could affect the outcome of your surgery. So if you have those there's two extremes. Is there a point in between, or what is that point in between where we actually say this is the cutoff point where you could use technology for whatever means? Can we establish a code of ethics? What does the industry and the stakeholders say about this notion? This case study is in interpreters, but are there any research, or can we test them? Because at the moment it just looks very extreme. And this is another plug on Facebook, and I'm going back to this. The next issue, the second issue, goes back to ancient Egypt with the scribes. So people had, scribes, as you probably know, had the privilege of being the only ones who can read or write. And during that particular time, they had the precision in society. Technology has since advanced, and as Claire Sharkey, as Nidia said, Kodak, you don't have to be a photographer trained in photography to publish the photo of your kitten or the food that you're eating. You can take it with your iPhone and publish on the internet. You don't have to train in journalism to write a blog. You don't have to. So Clay Sharkey calls it the amateurization of professions. Can we learn something from this? Is there an opportunity for health workers? I was talking to a colleague at the table and says, you write in 1, 2, 3, 4 languages. Perhaps one of the trends that we might consider is identifying those gaps. Finally, I just want to say, please keep in touch on Facebook. How many is on Facebook? Like the page, because we'll be continuing this discussion. Thank you very much, and look forward to the discussions today.